Well, hello. Introduction to psychology students. I apologize for having to do this, but at least I have the opportunity to. Excuse me. I'm gonna make sure I have my timer set here. These about 20 minutes each. Last upload easier to YouTube, so I'm gonna make sure I get along with that. So, in any case, I apologize, but at least I can put these on YouTube and you can get my lecture, although somewhat proxy. Chapter 5: Sensation and Perception. So you can read this, but my main point I like to make on this is the textbooks tend to get my laser going here. Tend to have something, a sensation is getting to the brain, and perception is the subjective experience of that. As we learned about last chapter, this is the big mind-body hard problem, and we're just going to let it go to the side, don't care about it, and just say this is what happens, and kind of leave out the how does it go from one to the other. It's not a camera, not an analogy. We tend to put things onto our perception. That's a so-called top-down activity. And so it seems like it's a camera. It seems like we see exactly what's out there, but that we remember what's out there, but we really kind of don't. Kind of a freaky thing. Bottom up and top down. Again, this is a point. When you read this, it seems like it says the cat, but it doesn't. That letter there and that letter there are the same shape. But from top down, we know this is supposed to be a H, and that's supposed to be a A. So we see the cat, even though it's not. It's actually the or something. I don't know how you pronounce CHT. The chat, maybe. So bottom up, lower levels, pain to the finger and frontal cortex. I use pain here because it's a kind of an easy one. So if you get a paper cut on your finger, ouch, ouch, that you'll notice that. That can goes from the bottom up to the cortex, and your cortex can then decide, it's a paper cut. Let's not pour lemon juice on it. Let's kind of put a Band-Aid on it and deal with it. Context, this is the example of context. The cat is an example of context. That's a T, excuse me, that's a T, that's an H, and that is an A. So sensory coding, basically the idea there is it goes from environment to neuronal information, gets transduced, that's the idea. Sensory receptors transduce physical and chemical and whatever form of information to neuronal impulses. Qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is how much, how bright something is, how loud something is. Qualitative is sort of your interpretation of that. It has a certain, there's a sense to which there's something that it is to see green or think about trees. That sort of idea, the qualitative aspect of perception. This is it. Same sort of idea. Green light. Unless you're at some of the intersections in Helena, in which case you want to wait for a while because other people keep running red lights. Even in front of the police, I've noticed, which is sort of interesting that people have the gall to run red lights even in front of the police. And here we are. Again, so here's the auditory, primary touch, they say, but it's actually several different things. Somatic, sensory, vision, smell. Most go through the thalamus except for smell. That's one of those things that's actually interesting, even though it seems like no big deal, but it is smell because your nose is like right here, right? And you go right up to there and go straight to the brain. That's one of the reasons we think that smell is so evokes so many memories. If you smell something, what do you want to smell? How about the smell of popcorn? You're probably remembering the smell of popcorn right now. Popcorn. And maybe you're flashing onto a movie theater. Boom, there you are in a movie theater. And maybe it's one of the more recent Star Wars movies. And now you have the emotional sense of disappointment because Star Wars just isn't that good. Sorry, that's my opinion. Frontal lobe, of course, is the prefrontal cortex up here. That's where we get all of our judgment. That's where we can make movies like Star Wars. And unfortunately, but luckily, we also have a good frontal lobe for people who, larger, more productive frontal lobes for people who want to watch Star Trek. Did I offend anybody? Probably not. And here's just a list. This is from 5.1. So vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Touch is actually more than just this. It's more than just pressure on the skin. It's called haptic now because it's temperature, it's position, it's vibration. pain, all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's my dog in the background. I'm sorry. I'm not going to play with you right now. I'm working. I'm sorry. But get for staying at home. She'll stop this in a second. Sadie, can you I can't pause this either. If I pause it, let's see, maybe I can. Okay, I think she's going to be a little bit quieter now. She's a puppy, so we're having trouble with that. She's now chewing on my hand. Okay, go do something else. Thank you. So, sorry about that. That's our puppy Sadie. She's a Great Dane, 8 months old. Qualitative and quantitative, again, you can read that on your own. So psychophysics, very cool idea. The idea in psychophysics was trying to match sensory stimuli to reporting of said stimuli. So the idea was to bridge that mind-body problem, and ta-da, we'll solve it. Didn't work, but it's pretty cool. But then you got a couple of good things from it. Absolute threshold, that's where you basically, you say you heard, saw, whatever, the stimuli half the time, which is interesting, right? Because that means half the time you were a little bit more accurate, half the time you weren't accurate. So 50% of the time. Just noticeable difference is the where you just have enough of a change, from here to there, something like that, that you're just barely noticing it. I'm trying to get just noticeable difference on my laser, for example. There, if I notice that, Yeah. The classic example of JND, and just noticeable difference, is going from one season to the another. It will seem like one day you'll wake up, now that it's fall, you wake up and you realize, wow, the days are shorter. It gets darker earlier and lighter later. It seems like it suddenly did that, but it didn't, of course. It's been doing that since June 22nd. It's been getting a little bit change every day, but that's a good example of the JND. Weber's law, that's a JND between two stimuli based on proportion of the original stimulus. What that means is if you're picking up a weight that, say, weighs 3 pounds, and you add a pound to it, you'll notice that. If you're picking up a weight that's, say, 300 pounds, 1, you're really strong. 2, if you add 1 pound to the 300 pounds, you won't notice it. That's the proportion. That's what that means. This is cool, hit and miss. Basically, what the boxes you want to look at here is for the yes sayers. They are correct. They have a hit, we call it. So they say they saw it when it actually was there. But however, 50% of the time, almost 60 actually, 60% of the time, they say they saw it when it wasn't there. Okay, so this is a type of personality, yay sayers. More accurate when true hits, but not on true negatives. They think they see it when it's not there. The naysayers, again, different kind of personality, only hit it positive when it's there 45% of the time. So they miss it 55% of the time. Even though it's on, the stimuli is there, they miss it. However, they more correctly say it's not there when it isn't. They're false. They have more true negatives, but fewer true positives. It's the same stimuli. My puppy has yet another toy. She loves toys. This is the chicken, by the way. So this is basically our personality, like I was saying before. Our personality structure changes the way we perceive the external world. The external world is only sort of out there for us to view. We definitely bias ourselves. That should be a little freaky to you. I hope it is, because it is a little freaky. What is really out there? There's more out there for the yay sayers, but there's more not out there for them too, so to speak. So anyway, we bring stuff to our perception. My puppy's laid down. That's good. And this is where it applies. For a radiologist, they have to call it if it's there or not. This person's getting some kind of bladder test. That's contrast material in the bladder. Looks like they peed it out pretty good. This person has, that's the stomach, so they did some kind of barium swallow, probably looking for ulcers. And this x-ray person is looking for probably that, whatever that is right there. They want to make the call. It's better for a radiologist to overcall something, right? Say, well, this might be a cancer, give it to the surgeon, and you make the final call. Because if they say it's not a cancer and it is, that really sucks. So they tend to overcall things. Actually, you can see this one over here. That's kind of interesting. That's all the small intestine, right? Kind of stomach going down. There's all the bariums going through the small intestine. So 2 different pictures here. One, this person had a bladder test. this person had a swallow. More psychophysics, sensory adaptation. Basically, it's a constant level of stimulation. You just start ignoring it. This is a plane flying into the airport over Heathrow. This is in the UK, London. So that's kind of cool. They just kind of don't hear it. Helena, the main thing is the train. They have silent zones now with the train, but you can still hear it go by. And people who live close to the train tracks will testify to that. I had this before, synesthesia. See it? Now this is a different word. No, it doesn't. I'm just kidding. ESP, BEM study, he looked at erotica, and that men basically could know where the erotica was going to appear on the computer screen 53% of the times, as opposed to it should be just 50-50. But even though that 3% is there, that's a big change. That's a big change between 50 and 53. So it seems like nothing, but statistically, it's quite something. Statistics are kind of interesting. You can do some things with them that may or may not be applicable, but nevertheless, this is what we use. And how do you explain ESP? Is there something out there that allows you to see things that aren't in your visual center? Some kind of PSI is what it's called. Look it up if you want. PSI might be a good thing to review for your paper. The review of the review. But I don't know. I tend to be skeptical. These are the so-called Zener cards. You predict what's going to happen next. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there is something there. There's some statistics that do support it. But I don't know. Extrasensory perception. I guess my question is, even if there is, what would you do with that? Yeah, so that's my other dog whining outside the door. Now here he is, correct with the receiver, brain scans, etc. So you have to send your visual imagery to this person in the MRI, and then they pick it up or not. That's the idea. I had a test in one of my consciousness classes several years ago, where I had a person come in who had remote viewing powers, where he could see things at a distance. I asked him, could you, during the lecture, he's a guest lecturer. I asked him if during the lecture he could see what was in the passenger seat of my car, and therefore remote view. He said he wasn't prepared, which I think was a very interesting thing to say. What does that mean? But he wasn't prepared, so he didn't see what was in the passenger seat of my car. Now you should be able to, right? Just look back in time. What is in the seat of my car? It's a Honda Fit. It's red. The car, not this thing that's in the seat of the car. Can you see it? I'm sending you projections through my mind. Nope. Okay. Well, we'll try it again later. So this guy, okay, by the way, it was a fishing net. That's what it was. So this guy had this idea that if you calculated the probability of thinking about a person's death, learning about it about 3,000 times a year. So just by chance, people are going to have this happen. You'll remember that chance because it's emotionally charged, but it may not be statistically really anything other than chance. A thing I like to say is how rare of an occurrence does something have to be a miracle when it does occur? So let's do some specific. Vision's the main one. We have a blind spot. You can see some of this. I'm going to make sure I get some of the main things and not just go over my power. So if you look at the blind spot, close one eye, look at the blind spot, the rabbit will disappear, which is kind of cool. You have to use, let's see. Yeah, you have to use your right eye because the rabbit will disappear. That's your blind spot right there. Now you might be able to look at the rabbit. Yeah, you can with your left eye, and the spot disappears. That's the blind spot. We don't notice it because our eyes move around a lot, but it's kind of cool. Oh, Angus. Now these cells here, your book calls them something in between cells or something, but I keep the older one. You need to know these. Amacrine, bipolar, and horizontal cells get the information from the rods and cones and bring them to the ganglion cells. The ganglion cells are what's formed the optic nerve and goes to the brain. These start doing processing, okay, and of the visual input right there at the retinal level. Classic example is most everybody has driven at night in the snow. And you'll notice that the snowflakes seem like they hop. They don't go inconsistent. They kind of go bop, 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 bop. They hop. It makes you sort of hypnotized for one thing, but it's quite the thing. And that's because these horizontal cells laterally inhibit. Okay, so if there's activity here, over here, and over here, it's inhibited. It's inhibited. That's why the snowflakes look like that. By the way, we have to keep my older puppy, Angus, outside. That's why he's whining, because he tends to disrupt the little ones, Sadie. They get into wrestling matches, and it's kind of dangerous. I'm going to pause this again and move to a place. Well, you stop and whining. I apologize. This is what I get for doing this at home. And things from the right visual field go to the left. Left visual field go to the right. We already talked about with the split brain. Most goes through the lateral geniculate nuclei of the thalamus, and they spread out to here. Some go to the superior, these two things here, superior and inferior. Blank on the name. Anyway, some branches will go down to that, those as well. Colliculi, gee whiz, colliculi. Superior colliculi, that's part of what blind sight is. Part of them goes down to here, and then up to the parietal lobe, and not to the primary sensory cortex. And then you see this guy smiling. Not sure why that fits in, but it does. What and where? We covered this some already, so I think we'll skip this one. Trichromatic is we have 3 different types of cones in a opponent process. This is at the ganglion level. This is at the cone level. And this is the ganglion cell. Remember the cones before? Where they receive the light, and the ganglion is forms into the optic nerve. But here's the 3 for the trichromatic, 3 different types of cones. You can test for that with here. For guys, it's mainly guys because it's an X-linked thing. If you're colorblind, you won't be able to see this number, which is 45. I am not colorblind. But you will be able to see this number. I cannot because I am, again, not colorblind. But that's a test for it, and as you can see, it has a trichromatic kind of thing to it. Here, let me get this out of the way. I want you to stare at this, stare at that little white dot for a while. I'm just going to have this go for a bit. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to get up from my chair and have this go for a bit while I move to someplace farther from my whiny puppy. It's not moving for you, that's okay. Stare at the white dot. Keep staring. Keep staring. A little bit longer. Still looking at it? Your mind probably wanders off a little bit, then bring it back. Bring her back in. And the American flag. Isn't that cool? If you close your eyes and open them again, you get that to come back. No, that's kind of a wild thing. That's the trichromatic. Or excuse me, that's the opponent process. That's the opponent process. And that occurs at the ganglion level. I'd back up again, but if I do that when I record, it just screws it up, so I can't do that. I'll skip that one. You can read that easily. Here's external and additive color, psychological process. Again, those are not. Make sure I get through all this. We can actually see just a little bit. A little bit. There's actually radio waves and gamma waves, rays rather. These are part of vision. Be cool if we could see those, huh? No, maybe. Who knows? No, sorry about that. And this is a weird one. It's kind of hard to demonstrate, but even though those colors look different, they're exactly the same. This is due to visual processing in the occipital cortex, actually, and that gets to the cortical region as opposed to cone, ganglion cell. This kind of moves upstream, if you will, to the cortex. And those look like they're different colors, but they actually are not. They're the same color. Blind sight, we've talked about some already. So this is, again, probably the superior colliculi, goes to the where. So you can see it moving. This is actually Susan Blackmore's thing. They stole it from her, but that's okay. But you can identify it correctly. It's weird. So this is gone, right? The visual cortex is, they have an accident or a stroke or something. They can't actually perceive anything, but they can guess correctly. That's really quite something. Why do we need this consciousness stuff? Let's see, construction, we perceive things. That's read. Gestalt, I'm going to stop here because that's a good place to stop. Well, let's get through the Gestalt, actually. Let's do a little bit longer. Aristotle. Now, you see things as a whole. So here's a couple things. Figure and ground. Let's go to some. There you are, figure and ground. Is that a woman behind a candle looking at you, or is it two women looking at each other? And boom, back and forth it goes. And my dog has moved to the other side of the house. And here's some more trippy ones. All right, kind of seem like they're flowing around. That's the Gestalt. If you look at these, it looks like the side ones are different color. They're kind of bright and dark. They're actually the same color. And we see these as clustered as opposed to individual ones. This is just sort of another trippy one. Again, these are in your textbook. And continuation. That looks like that line is back there. Unless you turn it into a satellite, a space satellite, some kind of space station. And these are now solar panels sticking out of the space station. That makes it go away. That's kind of interesting. And of course, we close in the triangle. You actually can see the little red lines. I take my little red laser beam out. You can kind of see it. It closes off. You really almost perceive it there. Of course, not there. And same sort of idea here. You definitely see that triangle. It's hard not to. And the blue one behind there. We fill in the blanks. That's a classic illusion. This is one of the doggy. I don't know if you can see the doggy. Yeah. This is from early on Gestalt. So let's stop here. Face perception. We'll stop here. So, all right. I will have another lecture coming up.